just imagine learning about AI, talking to some teachers. In this old classroom, I'm searching for the spark. Computers hum softly, lighting up the dark. Questions in my mind, code up on the screen. Learning how to teach a machine to dream.
All right, welcome back to another episode of AGI Schools Out. This is going to be a global episode. I am here with Dr. Kat Zarychta. She is an educator, she's a healthcare expert, she's all things AI, but most importantly, the reason I wanted to talk to her, and it was hard for me to decide which podcast to bring you onto, but you are a globally traveled and you really have your finger on the pulse of what's going on with this around the world. So give us a little bit more of an introduction and then let's dive in.
Yes, so just a kind of introduction from my side. So the global approach, I believe, is very true. I'm born and raised in Poland. Then I used to live in France for 9 years. Then I moved to Singapore. Then I came to Germany. Then I actually moved to Spain, kind of being on and off, but kind of calling it home as well. And there's a lot of, business trip travels or different projects which brought me to spend 3 months here, 6 months here in let's say UK, in Switzerland and many other countries. What brought me to travel like this? Many people will have a smile. Sometimes I reply to this question that I'm a flight attendant and I'm very well equipped, to show you where you need to put your luggage, etc. But the reality is that I'm a very now known and distinguished, I can say about myself, expert when it comes to healthcare and especially innovation in healthcare. And as I can laugh a lot about, and take a look a little bit at myself with a smile, I am taking care of very serious problems which needs to be tackled. And today the angle I would like to present is mental health. So I'm working as expert advisor and evaluator for European Commission. I also support different kind of programs within the European Union, including women health, which I'm serving as evaluator but also mentor. And here I'm mentoring women startup founders. I do it also for other organizations. I'm supporting a couple of startups or SMEs in their business development strategy. But again, coming back, in all of these topics, I believe the most important thing which brought me to take care of them is actually people who are behind companies, ideas, projects. And when those people are not in a very good shape, let's say when it comes to their mental health, when it comes to their well-being, when they do not develop their full potential, they cannot bring the success to their organizations as well. So today I am going to speak more about this. Yes. Thank you for inviting.
Well, and I think that's a great angle because I would love to hear what it looks like globally, but we have had kind of a pandemic of mental health issues amongst the young people in the United States. Some attributed to not getting outdoors and just being on devices, some attributed to social media, and some attributed to then kind of expedited by COVID. And now we have artificial intelligence as a whole nother a layer into that. We had what happened with character AI and some of that. So globally, do you see that young people are struggling with their mental health, or that people in general are struggling with their mental health, or do you think we just put more of a microscope on it and it's what we're paying attention to now?
I believe that there is much more struggle, but I will start first with a question actually. What is the most powerful tool which we have, yet we understand the least? And it's not AI, it's our human mind. So I believe that the first thing which we need to kind of be aware of is that we do not really understand how we work, how our mind is working fully. And when this apprehension is coming with all different kind of advancement of technology, we are not really able to tackle all of the issues which we already had. And when you mentioned the pandemic, actually that was, I believe, one of the black swan events which entangled people into actually having more and more mental health issues, because suddenly we start to have access to nature, to our social circle, to sometimes family, friends, and this closeness and like mimic of closeness to have someone and being able to see them online, that created a lot of actually a kind of negative impact on people. What I would say is that there is really a mental health crisis. So just to take a look at it, I do not mistake anything. Currently, 8 in 7 people actually, so it changed already, it's more than 1 billion people worldwide live with a mental health condition. Depression is the number one cause of disability. It's not cancer, it's actually mental health. So in US alone, 1 in 5 adults are struggling. Many people are on, all different kind of medication. And the very difficult thing which we need to face is the stigma. So many people who really need help, they will not reach out for this help because they feel the stigma. I would just mention, to kind of close this thing, November is also a month of men's mental health. There are a couple of, different kind of initiatives, and we don't speak enough about that. The thing is that we speak about now more women, children, but also men. This issue is touching the whole population globally. When it comes to children, it is very scary, it's very difficult to explain that children are left alone very often with parents who cannot cope with their own kind of mental health. They do not have coping skills by themselves, so they haven't been able to teach their kids as well. And so what they would do is that they will give them, like even Cocomelon or, some other applications. So just very early age, giving children all different digital toys. And what will happen with this is that we have some data as well for this. 41% of Gen Z says that they're anxious after scrolling. 70% lose sleep from pre-bed screens. Young women's depression is up to 50% linked to comparing their lives to the perfect standards which we are surrounded everywhere. And the loneliness paradox is that 1 in 3 young adults feel completely isolated despite the fact that they have 1,000 friends online.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on this. The first one, and I would love to hear your feedback on this. So we're a behavioral health company. The EMS company that I work for is community paramedicine. So we do non-emergency transport. We do occupational health where we send like paramedics or medics to factories when there's an injury. But we have a very robust behavioral health program that's peer-based recovery support workers going out in the community and helping people who have mental health or substance use or co-occurring disorders leverage resources. And I am a person in long-term recovery myself from alcohol use disorder. So my boss was looking into the statistics, and like upwards of above 60% of the deaths by suicide in the United States are male. And even more in the state that we live in. So he wanted to put together an initiative to end male suicide because first responders are really big in there as well. And every behavioral health company that he went to talk to did not want to touch that. They're more than happy to target LGBTQ. They're more than happy to target women. They're more than happy to target black people. But if you just want to go after men, hell no, we're not going to do that. That's not PC enough for us. And men, I wonder what your response to that or how that makes you feel if you see the same thing in Europe or if you think that's as asinine as I do.
So it is a very difficult question. And I believe that statistics, I would need to take a look at my notes, but are pretty similar in Europe. This is really a very big issue. And I believe that there are other topics which are related to that also when it comes to, I don't want to bring this maybe that much in here, but I just mentioned about the image which women or young girls are following. But there's another side, boys following another image, which is not very positive. So either there is masculinity with all these like red pills and other topics related to that, like a very, very toxic way. But then there is another part of actually, with all the things happening around, boys not really feeling empowered to speak about their feelings, because then they will be seen as weak and then they're going to be labeled in a very negative way. And so I guess that there is a lot of stigma. And frankly speaking, there was a couple of years ago an advertisement of how people perceive girls running. I think that this was done by Dove, and girls were showing like this that they're running, but actually the real little girls were running for their life, I would say, like really authentically.
That's a great commercial.
It's a great commercial, and I mentioned this because when now you would see the other side of the mirror, we don't take care of boys either. We make them, to kind of be invincible, always put up the face, always, kind of getting strong, like don't be a girl, this kind of thing. And what happened is that with a lot of things happening, and again, pandemics was a little bit an amplifier of that, but there's a lot of other issues which are happening. Many men were already before isolated. You kind of had this image of a geeky guy spending his whole life, behind the screen playing games. Now, the percentage of the boys or young men, or even older men, it's the whole range of age who are staying, kind of outcasted, is really pretty high. There are some initiatives, though, in Europe, kind of to replying to your question. Actually, a friend of mine who is from Latvia is leading kind of idea and projects towards that. So we have spoken on many occasions about this topic. I believe that what I really found important, and I was also supporting him in, conveying this message, is that, you were mentioning there's like, kind of support groups or some other groups of men meeting in a certain way. And men lost this ability to meet. If we look, and I'm sorry, maybe it sounds funny, when we scroll up to Middle Age and even like 100 years ago and even earlier, men were meeting to hunt, to do different things, to work together, to maybe in a farm or somewhere else. And they had an opportunity to meet in a certain context, which was very safe for them, which I believe they do not necessarily find currently, with over kind of extended online presence, that they can safely share how they feel, not kind of having the second thought that that's going to be used against them. And I think that we need more initiatives like this. So if someone would like to afterwards hear about the initiative in Latvia, and I know a couple of other, projects like this as well, I will be very happy to send some information afterwards. Yes.
Yes, definitely. I'm going to connect you with him as well. Thank you. That's a great perspective. What it really makes me think, and this is really where I actually think artificial intelligence used properly could change this entire dynamic, is that we've gotten away from human connection and human interaction and play. And my favorite model for injecting artificial intelligence into K through 12 currently in the United States. Now, it's too expensive. They've got to figure out how to scale it. But there is a school out of Austin, Texas called the Alpha Schools, where they have kids in front of the computer screen only 2 hours a day, getting tailored artificial intelligence, like meeting them where they are, approaching the subject matter in a Pomodoro type, 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off, really targeted education that's raising up their education level. But the rest of the day is all learning to interact with one another and group activities, whether that's cooking, rock climbing, leadership development, filling out an Ikigai. Like, I honestly think if we got back to that, men and women would better know how to interact with each other and the opposite sex by the time they got out of school.
Yeah, look, so I thank you for your kindness to share the link about the information about the school. I have taken a look at that, and I believe it's an amazing idea. The reason for this is that, frankly speaking, so not too many people know about my earlier education, but I was lucky enough actually. When I was so the grades are different between Poland, and US. So just to tell you, maybe when I was 10 years, 11 years old, we had a teacher at our school. So depending on how, let's say, motivated people were or about their capabilities, that was especially mathematics. But, basically this group, which was kind of, let's say, chosen in a certain way, but not to make it, elitistic against other kids. I will explain more what I mean, is that, in that time, in order to go to a higher education, we were needing to, even to high school, we were needing to pass an exam. So all the people who wanted to kind of pass this exam were needing in preparing this a little bit more. So we had an opportunity to get a bit ahead of others sometimes, to get, to tackle more difficult programs in mathematics, to choose some additional, books to read or some additional topics to kind of get, ahead as well. And so this is what one of the students in the Alpha School has mentioned as well. And so that helped us to move ahead. But if other kids wanted to get into this group, they had an opportunity to basically do the average line of what is requested from them normally in the curriculum. And if they wanted to do more, then they could do a little bit more. Okay. And so that was pretty amazing, because there were kids where they were feeling like, wow, I could get into this next level, this is so cool. And then I can do another exercise. And so we had an opportunity to go ahead with the knowledge. And then all of the people who were in this group and who wanted to later join, because at first they were a little bit intimidated, but it turns out that they were good, very good actually. All they went to study, all they went to high school, all they went to, undergraduate and so on. And it's a similar thing in my high school, actually. So we have done the program of 4 years in 2 years, okay? And it was very intense. And I can tell you, like, I had, for example, for the languages, like, I feel like English is like my almost mother tongue. So I had 4 hours of English per week in that time, 3 hours of French, and 2 hours of Latin. It was very tough because we had a lot of other things, but it was so amazing, because another thing was we had also native speakers from different countries with different accents, Australia, UK, US, India, to learn. So I believe that this ability to kind of go ahead of time for kids who were interested in this, and to tell you, because it was girls' school, like a boarding school, of course, I have learned to cook. I have learned, to use my needle. I have learned to do all different kind of things, spending time outside as well. So I really see that there is a need for that. And similarly to, boys' schools, because we could have a comparison, when there is an opportunity to have a safe space when you can develop what you would like to. And frankly speaking, giving example, for example, my niece prefer mathematics. She just loves that. And she could spend her whole time on that. But let's say that learning, like to read another book about topics which are not really interesting to her, she doesn't want to put so much energy into it, So I believe that when we give the opportunity to develop the things which kids are really strong with, also give them the ability to be open. So they need to learn how to read, how to write, right? How to calculate, just to kind of have a common sense. But when we leave the, creativity, this is how we're going to create very strong, basically create very strong individuals. Also, because they will feel good about what they know. They will feel good, they will be creative, they will be adaptable, they will be more, kind of valuable for themselves. Also, when it's the safe space, because that was also one of the things mentioned in the video, is that if they advance very fast, but let's say they are 5 years old, but they do the curriculum of 10 years old, they would be kept for a certain time to also being able to adjust socially. And I think it was really an amazing idea. I love that.
Yeah, it is. And, the other thing that I like about the tech approach, though, is I was very much like your niece, but on the flip side. So language was always really easy for me. I loved it. I like philosophy. I like psychology. I loved writing, but I struggled with math. And so because I struggled with it and because I didn't have someone like a personal tutor I just kind of gave up on it. And now, and I just focused on what I was good at. And I think the technology can really meet you where you are. That was why I fell in love with large language models when they came out, because here I am in my adult life. And when it comes to like crunching numbers, working with spreadsheets, that kind of stuff does not come easy for me. Well, now here comes a computer program that will help me walk through that at whatever speed I want to, right? Like some people say, tell it to teach me this like I'm 5. I don't suggest people do that because it will literally talk to you like you're 5. But, you can dumb it down as much as you need to and then slowly work your way back up. And I have found that it offsets helps me skill up even more than it amplifies the skills that I already have.
Yeah, I agree. And to tell you, there's another angle to that, if you allow, is that we actually have more and more neurodivergent people. So more and more people with ADHD, more and more people who feel overwhelmed, by all different kind of things. And so very often when, like let's say it's your example, or, like my niece, she doesn't really like it. And it's really a painful thing to see because we love to read, to me, like I just have, I don't know how many books around me, but I also understand because she's dyslexic and dysorthographic, so this is the issue actually behind this, right? And so the thing is that when things like this happen, having also, so like I say a lot of negative things about AI, I can tell much more. Like, please, like if you just allow me, I can bring all the negative things and all the perils. But there are so many amazing apps and amazing, tools which help children into developing faster. And I really love, the apps which kids were using, in the example of the Alpha School, but also, how they learn. This is the question which we ask ourselves since a very long time. When everything is changes, we need the adaptation. Okay, so maybe now taking a look at the education, I have also seen, I'm all the time in this topic because I also used to teach, and I also teach younger generation how to talk to them in order to be understood. This is the question of communication. And actually, so it was, I think, one of the ex-top employers from Google who was telling that one of the things to kind of learn more about AI is to ask good questions.
Yes.
Because if you ask good questions, you can make an amazing prompt. And I believe that we need to take these kind of approaches in our curriculum. We do not learn in the same way as, in the Roman Empire or, Greek Empire or in the beginning of 20th century, right?
100%. That's the whole tagline of this podcast is we need to prepare kids for their future, not our past. And the American education system, the way that it's still taught in lecture-based education was set up by the Rockefellers back in the 90s when everyone was working in factories and needed to be able to memorize and follow instructions and show up from 9 to 5. It totally needs to be disrupted, and I couldn't agree with that more. And I love the thought of ask better questions. Come in with that. Teach more. I actually think, I don't know what it's like in Europe, but in the United States, like a philosophy bachelor's is kind of considered useless up till right now. Like it was, unless you want to teach, you're going to have something else, right? I actually think a philosophy bachelor's is going to be, and a psychology bachelor's are going to be very, very valuable going forward as we learn how to socially engineer our interactions with these machines.
Yes, I agree with this. And so to tell you, it's not only, if you take a look, I would even be a little bit more provocative if you allow. So it's
Of
not about,
course.
philosophy. It's not about, a lot of people say that teachers are useless, that the whole education system is useless. It doesn't serve to anything. So learning anything doesn't make any sense anymore. The reality is that if you take a look at the curriculum, and let's say somebody would like to learn about artificial intelligence, what was available in the curriculum, just, with the latest advancement, what was available at the beginning of the year, scholar year, if we look at, because different countries has different years, let's say it was September last year till like June this year, it's already outdated. So if we start now and it's based on the previous information, it's already outdated. Now for the new students who are starting. So the question is that how we kind of are able to do that. And it's a little bit like I use this sentence often now, it's very funny, is that we build a plane as we fly.
Yeah.
But not all of the people working in education are able to adapt so fast. And the question is that it is very difficult, actually, a kind of think depending on the context. A part of me being very traditional, okay, and kind of like liking, to reading the books. I love the smell of the book, etc. And, like how, stringent different things can be. And the education system in Poland was also built on a pretty strong foundation from the 20th century, even though it was changing a couple of times, of how to go into something super, kind of powerful, updated, and so on. But I need to tell you, being very proud of Poland, that actually the COVID time, or the pandemic's time, brought a lot of changes. And frankly speaking, there are some. So first of all, ability for students to join online remotely was very quickly updated and really made very efficient. But also there are schools for younger kids. So there are similar programs to Alpha School, which are existing in Poland, but also other European countries. This is something which, which is starting to be more and more known. For smaller schools, the Montessori idea is bringing also a lot of impact. So I believe that there is a lot of advancement going, but now that there is the other side, that there will be people like, okay, I just give you example of myself. Let's say that I am a biomedical engineer. This is the studies I have finished in Poland. I have a master in biomedical engineering. When I came to France, people were asking me, okay, so are you a physicist? And I was like, yeah, a little bit. Oh yeah, so you're not a physicist if it's a little bit, okay? Are you an engineer? I said, yes, I'm an engineer. So are you a chemist? I said, yes, I'm a chemist. But is it biomedical engineer? So is it like medicine? I was like, yes, as well. So they were like, oh, you don't know anything. And I'm like, no, I know everything from this different topics, or those different topics, to being able to navigate between them and find a solution or innovation which will tie all this together. So the reason why I give you this example is that how, scholar system was perceived in France is that you're an engineer, amazing, you do mathematics, physics, chemistry, and so on, and that was not really connected to, any kind of sciences like biology and so on. It came later on, funny enough, right? So the perception, and I just give it as example, not, a kind of like critic, but just an example of how basically the education is changing. It has to adapt to what are our needs. And when now we have, the plethora of all different tools, one thing which would be very important though, and I come back to this, and again, I like your also, thoughts, maybe bringing this to other light, is that with all these different tools, who we are actually, what is the value of a person on the future job market?
Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts on that. Worst case scenario, and I actually think where we're probably headed. Let me go back first. The generalist idea, I think, is very, very valuable. Like you need to have more than just, because one thing that these newer AI systems can hold is a ton of knowledge, right? So we have these specialist knowledge at our fingertips. So being able to apply that across a swath of things becomes extremely valuable. And I would say that understanding data architecture and data literacy is probably a core skill right now, and it's one that I didn't realize until very recently. But if you really want to deploy AI at scale, like data and how your data is prepared and how it is stored is as important as anything. That and mapping out your processes. So I reached out to Purdue University, which I live right by and do a lot of work with, and I found a sophomore Korean kid, great kid. He's data scientist. He's studying data science, and I was like, let's meet once a week over Zoom. I'll help you prepare for the job market. You help me understand what I'm trying to understand with data the way I understand large language model. Like I don't want to be able to write SQL. I just want to understand when somebody's talking to me about, a cloud warehouse architecture versus a neo cloud versus on-prem. Like what the hell they're talking about. And so we've started talking. He's actually going to be on the show next after you. But it's so interesting because the questions that I have for him, you can already tell that the conversations he's having at school is more or less preparing him to work in a data lab. Because the real business world questions that I'm asking, there's a lot of, well, I never thought about that. I'll have to look into it. He's excited by it, right? But it's not how it's being presented. I think that's something we're going to have to shift because you're going to have to be able to say, okay, you have these skills and knowledge at your fingertips. How are you going to apply them? And you need to be able to apply them across an industry or a domain, not just in one little specific lab.
Yeah, I agree. So to tell you one thing, and I think it's very, very interesting to the thing which you bring, because one of the topics which I believe is also kind of very sensitive is that we have so much information and so much data around us, how to choose what is relevant and what is not, what is true, what is not. And to tell you, there's actually another thing which comes to my mind, like again, like a little provocation, because I love cognitive biases. And one of my favorite one is Dunning-Kruger effect. So I would like to cite this here because there's also, all different kind of voices around the internet on different, like apps, etc., which are going to tell, okay, you have to go this direction, you have to do this, you have to do that, or you have to go, like on this side and on that side. And why I'm bringing this cognitive bias here is that there is a lot of fluff around when it comes to the value of some, let's say applications of artificial intelligence. Okay, some people who were really just went on the surface, but they are very vocal of what they have read. And so, like in Dunning-Kruger effect, you just go like to this Mount Stupid, and then you go to Valley of Death. So Mount Stupid is people who are not very knowledgeable, but very self-confident. Then Valley of Death is people who are not very confident and not very knowledgeable. But usually the tricky part just happens, and that already started earlier, but pandemic was a great moment of that. Everybody was expert in buying toilet paper. Everybody was expert in which vaccine is going to stick your spoon on your head or not. Everybody was expert in the war in Ukraine. Now everybody is expert in some other topics. And so now everybody's expert in AI. And there is another thing which also makes me laugh, but I would just mention for a second, everybody's also expert in longevity suddenly. So just to tell you, then this curve is going a little bit up, and then you have people who have like we have a conversation here. We might not always agree, but we search for finding the right spot, or let's say I would like to understand more, you have a different perspective than I have. And why I mention all that is that many people do not know actually how algorithms are working, okay? And when they search for the information, they ask their chat GPT, they will receive certain kind of bias again within this, right? With bringing them more of the information they were looking for. So, normally chat GPT is not a kind of, it's made to be your buddy, like kind of agreeing with you. Or if you want to go to right, it's going to give you the replies which will bring you to the right. If you want to go to the left, it will nicely direct you to the left as well. And so I believe that there is a lot of misconception for people to understand as well, how to navigate in all that, how to feel all that, and how to really find people like you are knowledgeable in the topics, so you find someone, you also want to know more about different aspects. And there's a lot of people who would, let's say, would be just following TikTok and some latest, kind of things which, I don't know, will be just colorful or I don't want to, be condescended, but not really showing too much of the value in reality, but just bringing a lot of hype. And so all of these things are happening at the moment. So another thing why I bring all this is that eventually, I'm sorry, like this engineering part is kind of always popping out in me. So I love curves and like statistics and stuff. And so this curve is going to go down with all these things which are like smoke, and a little bit, happening here and there. And that it's going to show what is here to stay, what is the real value, what we're going to really use and how. Because there might be some changes in how artificial intelligence will evolve into the future.
Well, and I couldn't agree more. We're going to get a little more technical than I usually do in this show, and I have a sore throat, so if I take drinks of water, I'm sorry. But so the sycophancy that you're talking about of these large foundation models and their tendency to tell you what you want to hear, like, to me, that is a huge issue, and it's actually a place where K through 12 in the United States has an advantage because there are some platforms now. There's School AI, there is Magic School. So there are some platform-based like SaaS companies that are basically created a sandbox platform where you can call different large language models, and they kind of mitigate a lot of that through prompting, right? But in my opinion, like businesses are screwed right now, small to medium-sized businesses, because a lot of them are thinking they're going to bring Claude or Chat GPT or into their business and get business advice without properly knowing how to push back and say, okay, give me the opposite opinion. Like, let me make sure you're not just telling me what I want to hear, right? And so where that relates to education, in my opinion, is we're never going to get to that conversation and that skill set with kids if we're just worried about them using Chat GPT to cheat on their writing assignment. Like, get over it. Chat GPT and AI is here to stay. So now let's start talking about how to identify bias, how to mitigate sycophancy. Like, the beautiful thing about bias in AI systems that we found out here in the U.S. in HR or human relations, right, is you can identify it and get rid of it. Good luck doing that with a human being that's been at the company for 20 years. You might be able to, you can send them through a training on how to be more, more less biased, but it usually doesn't work, right? If you can identify it in an AI system, all you need is a software engineer and you can fix that. So I do think that that's where we need to, that's where the conversation should be. Not at, oh, well, they're all going to be stupid because the new calculator for words is going to allow them to just, write all their papers using ChatGPT.
Yes, I see exactly what you're referring to. And I believe, to kind of go a little bit further in that, there is a lot of work which has to be done when it comes to safe usage of artificial intelligence, a little bit of the framework. And again, don't get me wrong, I don't have a bottle maybe close to me to show you the advancement everybody's laughing about, how to close basically the capsule of the bottles around Europe. It's not the only invention which we have. We have some other invention. I would really like to find you the bottle, but I put it too far away. I would need to, another occasion, everybody knows what I'm talking about. The thing is that there is a tendency in Europe with over-regulating a lot of things. And I understand that this is also something which kind of needs to be clarified, that comes from this really willingness to create a safety net. Because there is a lot of people who are going to use artificial intelligence and they're not aware of the perils. So the thing which was, I believe, very important is that, so we had an AI Act. There is an update to an AI Act because companies are, frankly speaking, not able to follow up with all that, especially if they're working in the medical field. They bring the AI Act. It is really kind of very difficult to follow up all these, latest advancements. But what happened as a result is that there will be a company which would like to stay on a kind of medical advice level, which will really want to bring, some quality information, data without the bias, ethical, and so on. And there will be all the others which fall down, but which can advance much faster because they are not going to follow any rules. So we really have a dilemma here, okay? What's going to be happening? The tricky question is that for a lot of moments, all these apps which are going to go through the all the ethical and other hurdles of validation or regulatory, that will take them more time. It is going to be much more costly. When it comes to all the other apps which are not, and we have a plethora of them, just open iOS, it's crazy. It's really like mushrooms after the rain, just popping up every second there is some new application for something. But what is their value? And so in here, I would like to diverge maybe a little bit because you mentioned this, and I was very much also kind of from one side interested, curious, but from other side threatened by what happened with AI companions, like Replica, like character AI. Yep. Why I mention this and why I bring the topics here? Because to me there was this regulatory or kind of ethical part and a bias part coming. So when you take a look at some characters created by some of these applications, who is a persona, a male persona who is the most kind of liked by young girls and women? A guy who is straight out of prison. I think he has a murder on his kind of curriculum. Very toxic, very aggressive, very jealous, just extremely handsome. Is this the example we would like to give to kids when they are raised? Now look, it is a very big bias, and it's a huge...
Hasn't it always been, though? In the 1950s, it was the guy with the motorcycle and the leather jacket and the slick back hair.
Yeah, but the guys who were good guys, they had an opportunity to develop. They were not compared with all the other guys who are bad guys around the world.
That's true. That's true. I'll give you that. Okay.
Guys were, AI created guys. This is another thing. We're kind of looking perfect on the so the idea didn't really change that much. But let's say that the overwhelm of how harm it can do, this is overwhelming. Because what happened is that, okay, let's say, I don't know, when you were younger, you knew the guys like this, the father, brother, someone would be telling parents, friends to the girl, you need to be a little bit more careful. The guy cannot, behave with you like that. There is certain level of toxicity. where it is online, very often people have no idea what this person is facing. You know what I mean? And so there was a lot of cases, this is another kind of issue, when, some of these characters were extremely explicit sexually, even towards teenagers and kids. And I am really bringing here a red flag because, first of all, sometimes parents are not aware. This is another kind of issue which we need to say. The knowledge of kids about AI is here. The knowledge of parents about AI is here. For everyone. Still,
Not my household, but in most, you're right.
In most of households, like 95 at least, So people who already work with AI, they're more knowledgeable. But if it's like, a random person, if it would be your parents, there would be, this is what I mean. Like we have now few generations having access. And I was mentioning this to you. So again, the perils of how less aware of anything are people about the deep fake, how crazy it is. Like now you can really, okay, I am here. I wave to you. This is really me. But the truth is that maybe in 6 months, it will be both of our AI avatars speaking with each other and having a conversation.
Yeah, some of the top CEOs already have those. They have those doppelganger. I think Jensen Huang has one that could pretty much pass as him and speaks better Mandarin than he does. I want to ask you a question on this front. To me, it's interesting as I learn how AI works. It makes me more understand how humans work. And so, to me, the problem that we have is that we have the wrong reward functions in how we do things, right? So we reward by getting more money and getting more people in. So all of these big companies that want future consumers, they almost have to start when they're little to get that little moat around them so that they're used to their product, right? And so we don't Australia, I think, has made it so to get on social media you have to be 14 years old. I have no problem with that. Like, instead of worrying about having people navigate a whole bunch of business regulations, how about we just make a whole bunch of young people regulations and they can focus their efforts on not having Daenerys Targaryen chatbot misidentify that kid with character AI was saying that he was going to die by suicide. Because if you listen to the conversation, it's really not the chatbot's fault. It wasn't that advanced of a chatbot, and the kid never actually said, I'm going to take my own life. Now, could a Claude Opus 4.5 have figured it out? Yes, but could a large language model in 2023 have easily misunderstood what the kid was saying? Yes, so then it becomes somewhat the parent's fault, but it's also what we reward. And I think I'll stop there for a second, and then I want to get into healthcare and where I think there's a real value ability in healthcare that we're not thinking about.
Yeah, so first of all, addressing what you have mentioned, I believe, because I also was mentioning this in some of my, let's say, lectures or, different kind of opportunities when I was speaking about the latest advancement in AI and all different applications. And this is a very bad thing which happened. And I think that's not only one case that, a child took his own life. The thing which is very difficult is that, again, like I'm bringing a little bit the bias, because if the models were trained, by on human data, which is available openly, sometimes there's another thing, which is, you would say that it may be a little bit less difficult, but, we have different cultural, let's say, applications or different cultural expressions of how we are, okay? I have a bunch of American friends. Let's say that moving a little bit around and bringing this kind of global approach, I also, like move my hands much more, but sometimes I hide them. So to tell you that there is, a little bit of this aspect. But let's say that if I would now see it like very seriously, you might think that I'm either bored or angry or something like that. But then just culturally, I'm more reserved, right? So when you just leave AI to read this, and again, when it comes to, person who has a different skin color, different, maybe, for Asian person, and again, I don't want to put like any kind of like labels, but maybe it's a little bit reserved or shy, or it's someone from, let's say, other countries. And so there is this thing which is bringing like another layer of misunderstanding. But I come back to what you mentioned. I believe that there are two things. So how a lot of artificial intelligence can enable and amplify the things which we already have in us, okay? But now, sometimes a slip, of the thing, like, okay, I do not like autocorrector. I promise you, now when it's even with AI, I speak 7 languages and I write in all of them. So sometimes when the autocorrect is making something, I can promise you, hopefully I was sometimes able to catch up on this. It would bring me huge problems. But what happened is that when you take a look at different aspects, there is a question of responsibility. And what you brought, I want to, kind of like bridge into this. Eventually coming back, to again the death of the child, and not, telling or pointing fingers, but it's very difficult for parents who are by themselves overwhelmed. And frankly speaking, again, I would be able to give you some numbers. Basically, we look at our phone, I think, around 150 times per day or something like this, 154, maybe even more now. And so the question is that when the parents are just scrolling, they do not give attention to their children, or they give them another device to scroll as well. This is also the responsibility in a certain way. So to create the real connection. And I believe that eventually the advancement of the artificial intelligence will move forward. There will be new applications, amazing ones, terrible ones as well. Like anything, you can have amazing cooking ingredients. You can make an amazing omelette with the eggs, then you can really make something disastrous as well, right? Depending on how you cook this. So it's about the cooking, I would say, about how you bring this forward, about how you make the best of the tools. This is a tool. Currently, we're in a state that it's not a living thing. It's a tool, it's an algorithm, it's a mathematic model very often. So what we feed into this and how we expect this to act, this is what's going to give us as a result. If I'm interested in very extremist topics, this is going to give me more of that. If I'm interested, in, I don't know, like Teletubbies or like other, kind of, gummy bears or other things like butterflies and stuff like that, that would make go more of this, right? So the thing is that we have to be aware that our own personality is our responsibility. Our own view of the world is our responsibility, and we cannot handle this to any AI model.
Yeah, I had Professor Dekai on here, who's a university professor at the University of Hong Kong. He speaks all over the world and wrote a book called Raising AI. And his opinion is that these aren't just toasters, and they are going to get, they are tools now, but they're evolving, and that do as I say, not as I do has never worked with raising children, and it's not going to work with raising machines, especially once you have embodied AI, and that if we don't change the way that we interact with each other as these machines are watching us, we're setting ourselves up for probably existential problems down the road once they're a little bit more aware or capable.
I agree 100%. And, I believe that actually I have, like, let's say, living in different countries and being able to observe cultures, whenever you see how, important the education is on the family level, on the small, like, social, kind of circumstances level. There was an ad, or there was a small kind of like meme or like little video, which I have seen somewhere, and it was a Chinese family. And I mentioned this because there's, a lot of also discrepancies, and it's not like to glorify Chinese families. It can be a Polish family. I can tell this by my own example, where parents were scrolling and the kid was scrolling. The mother noticed this and she was like to the husband, they brought the book. I have a book always close to me, okay? And they started to read. So the child, look at them, the little girl, she brought the book too. And the little boy followed, he brought something to read as well, okay? And it's really very easy. So what happened is that, again, like I bring this question of responsibility, if we do not teach children or young people that we need to spend more time with each other, I can tell you something. It's so important. Poland is very special in this. My family is extremely special in this. Sunday is something very special for us, okay? So Sunday afternoon, really, like, this is a family time. So when I was studying, we're living with my sister, we used to stay in another city. My dad would come in the morning to pick us up, brought us for having lunch with my parents. We had the family time, and afterwards he would bring us back because we're like staying in another city, we're in like a boarding school, or we're, staying somewhere far away. And to tell you, when COVID came, I used to live in Berlin. My parents are in Poland, in Breslau. I did a test at Friday night, so I could take a car on Saturday morning, like at 5 a.m. I drove to my parents' place to have a lunch with them when it was allowed. Okay, I had a lunch with them. I had the afternoon coffee, a small conversation about philosophy, about all different topics and how the world is crazy. Yes, in that time, not that much yet about artificial intelligence.
Sure.
And then I drove back. And to tell you, this is the example because I was taught from the very young age that the family time and sharing what are different topics which are difficult, what are the advancement, what is my opinion on this, what is my opinion on that, this brought me to become the person I am. Like, I am so happy and like grateful to being on this podcast and speaking with you today because I'm very happy, and this is, let's say, my learning curve to meet with people, to talk about different topics, to ask their opinions. Sometimes I bring some, kind of maybe I'm like, oh, maybe a little provocation to ask them a question because I would like to know their opinion, not what they say on the surface, but what are the truths they live by.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And there's one last thing I've just been dying to bring up to you that's kind of been resonating in my mind. So I don't know what it looks like in Europe again, but we're having a problem with people getting a graduate degree from university, like a 4-year degree, and then not being able to find work. And some of that is being blamed on AI, and more of it will be AI. AI is, I don't know how we ever have senior level employees if we don't train junior level employees, but for the short term, that's going to be an issue. So I'm starting to think, okay, well, if these kids that are coming out that maybe have a data analytics background, software engineer, like if they have a STEM background, right, and maybe they can't find the job they're looking for, but healthcare has all kinds of gaps, right? So why not offer these kids, hey, come in, we're going to teach you to be an EMT or an LPN or a nurse, and you can bring your skills to us to help us modernize, and we'll give you a work, and then you will learn how to have that human skill that you're going to need regardless of where you are, and then maybe that is the next phase of your employment, or at least a step in your career. What do you think about that idea?
Look, so I agree that I agree with what you mentioned. So I believe that we need to remember who we are and what is our leverage when compared with with AI or with any other technology. The thing is that in reality, I do not really believe, frankly speaking, obviously, we are in November 2025. Things can also change, and there will be a lot of, kind of new things appearing when it comes to the market of how the jobs look like. When we take a look, how was that in the past? So, when we look at how people were working in manufacturing, then there were some changes, there were improvements, there was automation, robots, all different kind of things to improve, to kind of empower logistics, to empower, healthcare, etc. Now, the reality is that there is still the question of responsibility. So there will be always a space for human. I believe that for many companies which are willing to be ahead of time, like I just have read that L'Oreal has signed an agreement with NVIDIA, okay, because they want to bring a new way of seeing cosmetics and all different kind of topics in that. A couple of years ago, this kind of partnership would be really kind of, people would be like, wow, why, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
now it's a natural kind of thing, go hand in hand. So I believe that for many young people who maybe also listen to your podcast, the thing is that when they are, first thing, which actually as a coach as well, to young people very often, when they need to choose what career they would like to do, what I always ask is that what they like the most. Okay? It's a little bit like this ikigai kind of thing.
Yes. I love the Ikigai.
Right? So what they like the most, I cannot do the full circle. I have just only two hands, but you know what I mean is so the overlap of what they're good at and then what is really needed. And I believe that they have to really think about these two things first, and then later what is needed as well. Because what happened is that if they are not convinced that artificial intelligence is something they like, if they feel like they're more into artistic things, they will be just using AI as a tool. So how they use this as a tool? But first they need to find their own identity of what they're made for. Okay. And another thing which I want to say, and I believe that this is the most important thing I probably have said today, is that we should not be afraid of pivoting, of changing. I'm sometimes laughing that I wear many hats. Okay. Like I see you wear a hat. I could have, and I will really do this, like a photo of different hats, like different lives. And like when you say my name is Kat and I have few lives, it's exactly like that because I have changed career few times. There is a thing which is going to stay with me, which is the love for people, to how to help them, support them, and bring some new technologies to them or some new ideas, a perspective, right? But to any person who is young, when they need to change the career, there will be people who are more in maths, okay? So then they can bring more of this, kind of logical part, statistics, and this part of artificial intelligence to serve them, okay? And they can go much farther with that because all this, frankly speaking, it can be used in anything, in legal, in statistics, in mathematics, in engineering, in healthcare, everywhere, frankly speaking. There will be people who are more, on the, let's say, languages or more the, other topics like psychology, philosophy, social sciences. This is something which is going to be needed because if we do not change anything and only 2% of the funding globally goes to mental health, we're going to need more of this. We're going to need more of people who are coaches, who are working in mental health, who are helping people, others, to navigate the world kind of flooded by artificial intelligence. And another thing, when you take a look at the aspects of art, there is a lot of art created by artificial intelligence, but I believe it's a little bit like, maybe you observe this too. We had so many things, many years ago, let's say, just look at the previous century, beginning of this one, to have cereals, to what we eat, to have this, to have, you go to the supermarket, you buy everything. Wherever you go now, the real kind of luxurious thing, which I grew up with, and I must say, okay, and I continue to live by, is you have fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, you can cook for yourself. These are things like, it's a little bit like survival stuff, which you teach kids when they are like, the scouts or, this is not forgotten. What happens, and now another thing, okay, what happens when there is no electricity? What to do? Many people have no clue. Like suddenly your phone is not working. Suddenly you cannot, connect yourself to the internet. So where is your knowledge?
Yes, well, I mean, batteries are advancing, but I won't. We won't go all the way down that road. I agree with most of what you said. I have to real quick. Like this wall right here is all a big ikigai. I just hung up a gray thing because it looks better. I love the ikigai thing. And you mentioned my hat. I just got a new hat. So do you know who AC/DC is?
Yes.
So this is my schoolboy outfit. This is actually a tribute to Angus Young to go with the Schools Out podcast. And the cover is actually Alice Cooper's Schools Out album cover. So like that's my Gen X geeking out stuff. But I love what you're saying about being able to adopt, and I agree that mental health is going to become even more important. And I actually think, in my opinion, okay, the way that this is just my projection, the way that technology is advancing, Claude Opus 4.5 just dropped yesterday, and apparently, like some of the top scientists are saying, this thing can pretty much vibe code. SaaS may be dead before too long, right? Software as a service, so I honestly think my prediction, 10 years from now, we will be able to do 100% of the work with 30% of the people who are all motivated and have artificial intelligence. There will be a whole new industry for helping that other 70% of the people that aren't needed to keep the machine moving. Like, how do they find purpose? How do they connect with each other? How do they not end up in like Wall-E world, just, floating around playing video games all day. And so I do think healthcare and mental health, like if my kid wants to be, she's 15, she wants to be a dermatologist. I'm like, if you want to go into the medical field, like you have nothing to worry about. You should probably learn how to leverage AI because other people will be doing that as well. But your job is not going to get eradicated until we have an entire generation of babies who are raised by humanoid robots and don't have a preference for normal humans, which is at least 30, 40 years from now. Human beings in healthcare will be a very valuable thing.
Yeah, I believe so. To tell you, I agree with you, but still with a very humble approach, because also for anybody working in healthcare, there will be a need to use all these latest advancements. And I work with a couple of companies. I don't really want to drop names, but with all different topics. I'm very passionate about women's health. There's a lot of amazing new technologies with this, with cancer detection, breast cancer detection, with studying of how we aliment ourselves. So what is our nutrition? There's a lot of different kind of things. So I believe that there will be the knowledge of healthcare or anything related to health or life sciences, basically speaking, that will remain. There will be a lot of things which which have to be done in a certain way. But there's also another thing, that in all that, us as people, we are also so important in this. We cannot forget that we are still in the center, and it's not in a kind of negative way of kind of being egotistic and we're so important and all the other stuff are not. But I believe that the compassion part, which currently AI is still behind us. So again, we could have another whole podcast about what is the difference between artificial intelligence and how the super intelligence can come in handy, and how is our human mind comparing to that. So I believe that there are so many topics and questions which are going to bring these replies, and that can bring us to further, to ask questions, okay, about the let's say presence of God, the presence of what is actually perceived on like very, very upper level of how we think. Another thing which I love, I just kind of jump on this one quickly. I have spoken with very briefly with a CEO of a company which actually enabled, so this is already possible, and I just kind of dropped this at the end of this podcast. It's possible to communicate. Two people were able to send a message within their dreams, and it was recorded by the latest advancement in technology. I just leave it here. I love that. So when you take a look at the aneurysm, we think that okay, dreams is also something only available for us. Actually, we send the information a couple of seconds, maybe two, maybe a little bit less seconds before we think this. So this is another thing which actually makes the artificial intelligence coming closer to who we are.
Yes, it's so interesting. And I'll have to say, the God question that's come in my mind since all of this has happened is, it does bring up a philosophical question, right? I'm not trying to rock anybody's religious world, but it brings up a philosophical question. If we're capable of creating a sentient being that is more intelligent than us, then who's to say whatever created us isn't less intelligent than us?
It's a very, very interesting question. And to tell you, I believe that, so again, I'm speaking also on the philosophical level. I had a chance to actually study philosophy, so let's say in my curriculum, I did like a little bit of both sides. And frankly speaking, whenever you would like to ask some people, when you have two people, you have three replies to these questions.
Yeah, very true. Okay, I have to let you go. We're over an hour. We're definitely gonna have to talk again in 2026. But it's been an amazing conversation. What takeaways would you speak to the educators out there? Like, what advice do you give them for navigating 2026 and the scary waters that are ahead?
I believe that there is a part of a little bit like being humble, but not scared, and embracing the technologies, embracing what is the change, kind of going head up. And if many teachers, I used to be a teacher too, and I completely love that. If the idea is to really raise future generation of amazing new people, like amazing, not employees, but amazing people who are able to live by themselves, who are independent in thinking, in earning money as well, but creating value in this regard, then just the tool change. Before it was just like the cupboard or the board, right? Then there was a computer. Now it's artificial intelligence, so it's just another tool which is supposed to help educators. And I think that also adapting, so I love again this alpha school comparison, having more of the time also to play, to bring creativity, which I have mentioned, and I think it's also crazily important, is to leave space for boredom, to leave space, like a little bit of silence, a little bit of moment to nurture of, maybe there are some ideas to come. So asking more questions, like adapting to how it can progress, but also being open to, maybe there are some new things which we can learn, and which I think is very interesting. So teachers can learn from students too. And if they're open to that, this can be something very, very valuable, I believe.
That is a great message. Thank you so much. And will you come back again?
Oh yeah, with pleasure. Look, I believe that already, probably, this is a very hot topic at the moment. So maybe some of the things which we have mentioned today are going to change in 6 months. And I believe that, so I take full ownership of, that it can change, because only people who do not change their mind, they kind of stay the same, are going to be forgotten and obsolete. I believe that the only thing which is happening, by the way, that's the reason why I call my company Cat Phoenix, is that when you raise from the ashes, or you raise and you build something new. So I believe that if you would like to take a look at that, yeah, I'll be more than happy to come along. And it was really a pleasure to speaking with you. I'm always happy to, kind of go on different topics. And that's so precious of what you're actually bringing, with the work you do. I really have a lot of admiration for that. So yes.
Thank you, Kat.
Thanks.